You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I hope wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing pretty bloody well. The guest you're about to hear from, his name is Ihsahn, and he is the frontman of Emperor, and he also releases music under his own name. Does he really need any more of an introduction than that? Probably not. If you're listening to it, you know all about the man, so let's hear what he has to say. Here we go. So Ihsahn, welcome to the show. You know, I must say that I've really enjoyed your evolution as an artist and a musician. So most people will be aware of your contributions to black metal as the frontman and Emperor, of course. But significantly, you are now 7 albums into your solo career. So what can you tell us about the new album? And I hopefully will pronounce it correctly. Is it Amar or Amir?
Yeah, Amr.
Amr, there you go. I was close.
Yeah. No, well, thank you for the introduction. No, it's... what can I say about the new album? It's at this point, I mean, with these many albums in, it's a different interpretation of where I'm at musically. I like to kind of flesh out a lot of ideas as a framework for every album I start making before I actually start writing anything. And as a comparison to, my previous album, Arctis, which obviously was very much, the scenery was outside.
Yep.
So the scene of that is kind of, in this Arctic landscape. This new album, it's, as the cover suggests, and I think also the production suggests, and the lyrics, it's all very much happening inside.
Okay.
It's very closed off. So I know this is very abstract, and I would say that it kind of follows the similar ideas of as I did on Arctis, where I wanted to explore more traditional, pop rock songwriting.
Yeah, I could definitely feel that. Yeah, for sure.
And I wanted to continue that on this album as well. But I instead of kind of going with the typical arrangement of that, I wanted to make some other decisions, early on. And I previously leaned on doing a lot of, using a lot of orchestral samples. That goes way back to my beginnings in Emperor, but very much inspired by film soundtracks and the likes. But also at the same time, this fascination for the eerie sounds of analog synthesis and John Carpenter and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to not limit myself to, but kind of have a special focus to rather go with analog synthesis and do a more synthesizer based and I have different inspirations for it, but like I had this fascination with some music where they do like mono drums, so we recorded the whole album, with these analog synthesizers in mind. We recorded the whole album on an acrylic drum kit, really down tuned, and with all stacked cymbals. So you have nearly no ringing cymbals at all. So it's like all the very tight percussive sounds. Yeah. So there were some general ideas, and I think Linus Corneliusson, who mixed the album at Fascination Street, I think still he could easily have mixed the album as a more typical polished, extreme metal production. But he was very, very cooperative and great in kind of helping in channeling that original vision.
Yes.
So it's more of a risk, but it just makes the whole process more interesting if you kind of go with the whole idea.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and yeah, I know exactly what you're saying when you say it's a bit of a risk, because I imagine the dyed-in-the-wool black T-shirt wearing Emperor fan, some of this music's going to be very, can I use the word confronting to them?
Yeah, I don't know really. I mean, at this point, I mean, I try to remind myself. I mean, I get this a lot. What do you think? The Emperor fans would think of your new music, and honestly, and this is not disrespectful, but I don't. I don't think about it.
Good, yeah.
Because and I think if people are critical to developing and doing new ideas and everything, I think they tend to forget, especially if, the purists of all early black metal. I mean, they need to remember that the reason that music was created and came about, and the reason we as teenagers, kind of ended up doing that type of music at the time where this was no career. I mean, in 1991, starting a black metal band, was the worst career choice ever.
Yeah, definitely.
So we approached this, for purely artistical reasons, and I think as against all odds, that made it as exclusive and as kind of exotic. Coming from Norway, we didn't try to go to London and make it. We didn't go to LA to find a producer to make it. We've always more or less, stayed in a Telemark Norway state of mind.
Yes.
And I think I like looking back. I think that is the reason it became, a thing of its own, because it was never intended as, something for mass appeal. So it's kind of a paradox that it actually ended up being the way I make my living, and I feel so privileged to have, my passion for music be my livelihood, but also being able to do so in such an uncompromising way. Because I know a lot of musicians who love playing music, but who have to play with any style of music and do a lot of the stuff that maybe are not that close to their hearts, but to make a living. And I've been so privileged to be uncompromisingly do whatever the hell I wanted, throughout my career. And so I think why change that, that recipe now? And I think it's of course a very selfish thing to do, because I'm very privileged to have people actually, picking up the albums, and that, there's a synergy in that whole thing. But at the same time, with my background, I feel it's kind of the most honest thing
for sure.
to do as well. And I at least I've tried to communicate that, through interviews and the way I do my music, that at least maybe I do an album that may not be your cup of tea and doesn't resonate with you as a fan. But I hope that people who have followed my music for a while at least trust that it's something really genuine, and it's made very 100% heartfelt. It's authentic, and I try to. That's why I changed these scenarios for myself, because I want to. That's why this time I wanted to use all these analog synthesizers and explore that kind of soundscape. I've even picked up influences from dark R&B and hip hop stuff, and I've used 808s.
Cool, yeah.
And all that in my music, because this is something that excites me, and it's a simple philosophy that I think if I'm not super excited about, making the music, I can't expect anyone to be excited about listening to it. It's a communication of energy. So, which of course helps me, it's a good argument for me to just keep on doing my selfish thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people want you to keep doing, as you say, your selfish thing, because you are, you do produce extraordinarily complex yet memorable music. So let me ask you this question here.
Well, thank you.
I'm a big fan of funk and disco. Okay, so I'm going to out myself now. I'm not really a metalhead, to be honest with you. I'm more into funk, disco, and jazz. Now, of course, funk and disco, both of those styles of music have very strong jazz roots, which is something that I can hear in your music, and I've actually always heard it. Now, I'm alone in this, but what I'd like to ask you is that from the cadence of the drumming across quite a lot of the cuts on Armour, through to the solo, for example, in Arcana Imperi, what role has jazz played in your evolution as an artist?
Well, I wish I could say I had studied jazz or anything like that, but it's just as a fan of some eccentric music, like Miles Davis, sketches of Spain or kind of blue, small stuff like that. The reason I ended up using saxophone in the first place was for listening to Jan Garbarek, Norwegian saxophone player, if you know him, and it's just small bits and pieces like that. It's like I've also often referred to as kind of falling into the prog category as well.
Yes.
And like people are, oh, what kind of prog bands are you into? And you would ask me, because a lot of the prog bands, the members are like living encyclopedias of 70s prog and who was who in which bands and everything. And I'm like, sorry, prog. I've never tried to be prog or anything. It's more just a result of me, experimenting with the few things I know.
Yes.
So I'm afraid I don't have a jazz background. I have no.
But you're an appreciator, though, and I can tell that. I can tell that it's music that you listen to, and you go, okay, I understand what they're trying to achieve here. Let me see how that works in my music.
Yeah, and it's just like small things, like on Das Herrenbrechen, I explored some synthetic scales, to give some new kind of musical color. So all these things fascinate me, but it's just me kind of approaching different, these sounds. And from jazz music, like I've used let myself influence, like on Eremita, I was influenced by some of these jazz arrangements I heard with these like really short percussive but deep brass sections, like these brass stabs, stuff like that. And I mean, I'm at the age now that I just differentiate between two genres of music, and that is the stuff that doesn't do anything for me, which I'm neutral to, and and the stuff that
moves
gets
you.
me excited.
Yeah. So on that note, another thing I noticed was that on the vocal to Where You Are Lost and I Belong, it reminds me a lot of Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode. So I don't think anybody's really heard the album in the public sense, but have journalists been giving you feedback that they can hear that through that track?
Well, I think you're the second journalist or third journalist I speak to who actually heard the album. So
rightio.
I haven't really had that much feedback yet, and especially not on that song. So, but thank you.
Well, that's what I hear.
A compliment.
Oh, it's definitely a compliment. Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about you. When I talk about, when I'm discussing the evolution of yourself as an artist, it seems like there's nothing off limits. As I say, you got emperors in your past, and I understand that Emperor still performs from time to time to this day. But really, you're an evolving artist, so I'm almost excited to see where you go in, say, 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, me too. That's the thing. That's the thing. That's probably why I, end up releasing albums like almost every second year, because that's kind of what keeps me going. I love studio work. I love spending time in my studio and just write music and have these concepts that and it's always a quest for. I mean, that's why I still refer to my music as black metal, because from my very beginning, that core inspiration, that kind of drive and need to do this. It's of course it's I've been super privileged to be able to do this, but at the same time it feels like I never really had a choice.
Yes.
It's good just as a driving force, and of course as a music lover, it's this thing inside you that makes you. It's some kind of abstract ideal, and it's kind of in you as kind of a boiling pot, and it's far out there, as a glimpse of an ideal. And I feel every song and every album is just another attempt of coming closer to that kind of state of mind. Those few milliseconds where your hands, the hair on your head, on your arm stand up.
I'm a musician. I understand that.
And you just lose yourself. That's what you go for. And most of the stuff that I'm most happy about, or most satisfied with musically, are usually material that I have absolutely no idea how I came up with it. But it's like suddenly just my computer is playing back some music, and I have no idea how I got there, but I can kind of take credit for it.
Well, you've got a very strong connection to your musical muse. That's what it is, and because you're intellectual, you're a smart bloke, you're able to tap into that and turn.
Oh, thank you for saying that, but I don't know. But it feels like cheating sometimes.
Well, long may you continue to cheat then.
Yeah, no, but it's funny because I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues and also people that that I admire.
Yep.
That and a good example like Devin Townsend. To me,
Yes.
he's like he it seems it's nothing he couldn't do. Like he's super talented. He's vocalist, guitar player. Everything he does. I mean, he was doubling Steve Vai solos in his band when he was 18. It's like he's like super skilled.
Yes.
And I've kind of been given a lot of credit for my work, and I'm like, oh, how long can I get away with this? When will people catch me red-handed? With all my flaws and all the stuff I don't know.
Right. Okay.
And I spoke to Devin, and he said he felt exactly the same way. Because you kind of thrown compliments at you, and you just feel like you kind of been lucky,
Yeah.
and you can kind of take credit for it. But yeah.
Well, I've had a good chat to Devin as well, mate, and you both share something. You're both very humble. A lot of humility here.
Yeah, but it's not like that. But it's I think for me that was kind of comforting to see someone who I kind of believed was super confident about everything, because it was so obvious that they were super talented. And for myself, I just felt I was just barely getting away with it, and to see him struggling with the same kind of things, and
Yep.
I guess it's for all people who deal with any kind of art form. Of course, what people see is what you actually finish. They don't see all the crap that all the sketches and all the folded up paper.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't. No, a lot of people who listen to music who don't have an understanding of how music is created wouldn't understand the creative process and how maddening it can be. And yeah, you're right. And how if you don't save something at the right time in your DAW and whatever you're using, Reaper or Audacity for a lot of the people who do it at home, or you don't have enough hard drive space halfway through with these bloody new MacBook Airs. Sorry, with only 120 gigabytes of hard drive internally, and the thing's trying to back itself up madly into the cloud, and it doesn't happen fast enough, and you've lost something that you thought was approaching genius.
Yeah.
Hey, let me go back to something, because you mentioned you still classify your music as black metal. So I had a good chat to Sata last year ahead of the release of their album Deep Calleth Upon Deep. Now, my opinion is that both yourself and Sata are the pillars of Norwegian black metal. Now, what I mean by that is without either of the two of you, it would be akin to removing the rudder from a yacht. So have you ever felt an obligation as the composer of so much revered black metal to assume the mantle as the spokesperson for the genre?
Not at all, and that is also very deliberate, because to me, I think there's this misconception again about black metal. I think it's a total paradox. That people have these rules about what black metal should and should not be, which is typical for all kinds of subculture. I think that kind of rises to some kind of commercial level. That it starts out as a very open, field, because there are no borders that are defined. But then a few bands. It's like you play guitar.
Play bass. Oh, bass
Yeah,
and
bass.
guitar, but my stage instrument's bass. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but like Jimi Hendrix, people. Oh, Jimi Hendrix, he was the greatest guitar player of all time, and also we have to buy his old gear and kind of just simulate that. Which is kind of the opposite of what he was doing. I mean, he was plugging his guitar straight into desks via a fuzzbox. He was obviously, the reason he came up with that sound is because he was pushing the envelope of where sound was at that stage. So I think he would be horrified to be an inspiration for going backwards.
Yes, understood. Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely on that point. Yeah.
And the same thing with Norwegian black metal. I mean, this is obviously, the do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That whole satanic imagery thing, that big ego, don't tell us what to do, that whole rock and roll rebellion thing just pushed to another extreme in that decade. how could you ever put, I mean, well, to put it simpler, if I, as kind of a front man in a black metal band, what kind of black metal music would I make with integrity that could kind of resonate that kind of atmosphere and kind of dark subject if I was listening to what, okay, what would my fans want? Maybe someone else could tell me how I can do my music. If you know what I mean. That's a paradox. I mean, yeah, it's. I felt that I feel I described that very wrongly, but I'm basically.
No, I understand. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially the Hendrix comparison that you made, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get this all the time. Oh, will there be another Emperor album? Because obviously people are very nostalgic to that, and I was thinking, are people actually aware what they're asking? Because what kind of Emperor album would they like to have?
Well, I think they've got one now through your. I mean, with all due respect to Samoth, through your new album. I mean, you were a primary architect of the Emperor's sound, so this is really it. It's just under a different name, in my view. Am I on point there?
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, again, if I did my music, I mean, this is how I write metal. In 2018, this is how I write metal, and if it was up to me, whether it had the Emperor logo or regional logo, it will, in my ideal world, this is what it would sound like. But obviously, had we continued Emperor, I would never have, Samus and Trim would probably never agree to do Emperor with 8-string guitars and saxophone, free form. So to me, and no disrespect to them, I mean, it was a compromise of who was in, especially me and Samos, that made Emperor what it was. But for me, doing an Emperor album now, a metal album with Emperor, would kind of be a limitation to where I wanted to kind of push my music. So and we could easily make an Emperor album that sounded something like the early stuff. We could probably do something that sounded like a mix of Ihsahn and the Wretched End, which is Samoth's thing.
Okay.
But I mean, would it be anything? Would that be genuine? Would anyone or have any band kind of reformed after almost 20 years and actually made an album that was like, yeah, fuck, this is amazing? It doesn't happen. So people ask for another Emperor album, but I think it's just really the desire to kind of recreate and relive some kind of nostalgic moments, as both you and me know, with music that we grew up on as teenagers, that are attached to so much of our memories, our feelings, and what we ended up being. And I took my son to see Iron Maiden, and just reliving those moments, listening to those songs. It's
yeah. Okay, I think have I got time for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I hope I framed this next question appropriately. So here I go, deep breath. So I've read a few interviews with you online, and a common theme is for journalists to focus on your past, which of course means the obligatory reference to Bard's and Samoth's respective crimes. So you've long made your thoughts clear on these matters, so I'm definitely not asking about your perspective there, but do you get to a point when you're reading your own copies, so say you're listening to an interview or reading an interview with a journalist and they've turned the story into being, or there is somewhere in the mix of the story, there's a paragraph or a narrative about Bard and Samoth as if their actions from over 20 years ago are somehow specifically relative to your current creative pursuits, and do you think, oh God, here we go again?
No, not really. That's what can I say? I think in the past, especially early Emperor, and also I was very concerned when doing interviews. Oh, was I misquoted? Oh no, they got the wrong idea. Oh no, they're kind of angling this wrong, and being very concerned like that. But then I mean, I can't remember how. Yeah, I've probably done thousands of interviews, and probably said so many stupid things and been misquoted so many times to probably the opposite of what I've actually said, and it hasn't really backfired that hard, So I don't care, and it's like with my albums. I mean, obviously, the first Emperor albums, and
course, yeah.
it's come to such praise. The same magazines that absolutely slaughtered our first albums when they came out are the same magazines who have put those albums side by side with Black Sabbath's first album,
or Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. You see in the Nightside clips up there with that all the time.
Yeah, stuff like that, and so I've kind of been getting so much shit and so much praise for exactly the same music, and I've just in the boring way I've just had to relate to, okay, that it's my own perception of whether I succeeded or not, in relation to the goals I set for an album. That's the only way I can. Of course, I appreciate when people come with constructive feedback and if it resonates with people and they feel good about it. But and of course, I'm not immune to criticism. It's it can be provocative, but as a whole, I mean, the popularity of an album or me or whatever, it's kind of gone. That's like going up and down on the stock market. And it's like I noticed, especially I think that's gave me a good perspective, because I've been playing with Emperor and Ihsahn kind of back to back, over the years, over the last few years now. And sometimes I'll come to this huge festival in Europe and kind of play the main stage to 50 or 80,000 people, and next year I'll be there with Ihsahn playing maybe the 10 to 10,000 people, and on the middle of the bill. And 1 year I'm kind of treated like fucking royalty, and the next year I'm there carrying my own guitars and all that stuff, and I don't mind, and it's all these, to me it's just a very superficial framework, because I kind of know my limitations and I know what I'm good for in a way. So, and when I get on stage, I don't honestly I don't care whether it's Ihsahn or it's Emperor, because I kind of just go into that bubble. It's more of a state of mind. It doesn't matter if the songs are 20 years old or 2 months old, but you get in that zone. So I just, to me, it's just been a rather funny experience to see how kind of these popularities or the stages of things just fluctuates, and it's absolutely nothing I can do about that. And kind of going back to your original question about with Bård and Samoth, and when we did the In Eliza the Clips reunions shows with Bård on drums, people are like, oh, how can you take him back in the band, and I was like, first of all, I mean, we were friends, and it was 20 years or so something ago. It was, of course, none of us, not Bård, none of us are kind of condoning, murder or arson.
Never said that. Nobody in the band has ever said anything like that. Yeah.
No, so that's one thing, and of course, you can have a personal opinion about that act and whether you want to take a stand on that or not, but as long as, but then he's kind of served his time, and the kind of the Norwegian and general Western courts are kind of finished with this case. So he served his sentence, and the whole point of that kind of democratic thing, so the rest of society is okay, okay, you did your time. It's kind of over.
He did the crime, did his time. Yeah. So, and then of course you can always have individual perspectives on whether you agree with that or not. But for us, and on that note, as I said, if it's not politically correct, but if you're very, very concerned about political correctness, maybe Norwegian black metal is not for you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It fascinates me the way journalists and contributors, bloggers or what have you, bring up matters that happened, 25 years ago or so. It's 25 years ago, if you can believe it now. My God, it makes me feel old.
But at the same time, you can't blame them because obviously, especially for the general public, of course, they don't this music doesn't resonate with them. But of course, it fascinates them with the drama and the extremities of things.
Yeah, I'm glad you see it that way. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah, but I
perspective.
mean,
Yeah.
it's like people are consumed with the. I mean, it's fascinating. Like Kurt Cobain's suicide and drug abuse. You know, or Jimi Hendrix, as we talked about his drug abuse. You know, which is horrible stuff, but it's still iconic because it was so extreme. You know, he was not just he was not a guy in a suit and a day job. You know, it was something just far on the edge, and that's kind of what it kind of adds to the experience. And it's no denying that all the all the sensation and all the extremity, which actually this was not just people in makeup, playing extreme music in the Norwegian black metal scene. There were so many things that actually got real.
Absolutely. Yeah, the mayhem story. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was very serious.
All that. And for people, kind of adding that energy into this music, obviously it made the experience more, what can I say, authentic. So you can't really deny and kind of pretend it wasn't like that. But for me, the way I look at it is that if people's interest, if that was all it was, it wouldn't last. I think it's been kind of a personal victory in that since often our success has been kind of partly been given to things outside the music, that attention. But it kind of feels, at least not as a success, but kind of liberating to be able to go on stage in jeans and t-shirt, and just play the entire in a nice little clips or the entire anthems to the Welkin at Dusk.
Yes.
And that's good enough. You have 50,000 people singing along.
As they do, I've seen the videos, yeah.
Yeah, so and it doesn't matter if we're dressed up or have makeup. The music is kind of beyond that, and I don't think if it was only the imagery and all the stories and all that extremity, I don't think we could have done these anniversaries the way we do, and people wouldn't have connected to that music that long ago. And I don't think that young people these days, which is another kind of fascinating things to me, that people who weren't even born when we did those albums, they actually pick them up now.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? When I see 20-year-olds in Emperor t-shirts, because they wouldn't have known it back then, like I did. I grew up with it.
Yeah, but obviously it's again it's kind of an abstract thing, and I believe that because that kind of rebellious, youthful nature that obviously went into. We were teenagers, when we did the first Emperor album, and of course we had no clue what we were doing, but the intention and the energy we put into it was something that probably resonated to young people with a similar mindset. And I think people who kind of young people are drawn to this type of music, that youthful energy is kind of part of that recording, and I think in some way that might resonate with them as well, because it surprised me, because obviously we get statements, so it kind of surprises me that these old albums just keep on selling.
It doesn't surprise me because of the quality, to be frank with you. Okay, people are drawn to quality, and in the same way that people are purchasing Hendrix albums 50 years or 40 or 40 or 50 years after they were recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe people are going to be doing that in 50 to 60 years' time with Emperor albums and with your albums. Quality stays. You look at Mozart or the jazz greats, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis. Yeah. People of all ages, all religious affiliations, they get into this music, and yours is similar.
Yeah, but it's all a matter. I think it's so important, and that kind of concludes, I think, much of the conversation we just had. It's in the end, you just have to keep focused on doing things with integrity. Indeed. It's like I have some guitar students, and you've been successful. What's the right thing to do? And I say, well, you know what? Nothing is. I mean, there's so many things in life you have to do. You know, playing guitar is not either a human right or, a chore. It's something that you do for pleasure. And eventually, if you do it, extensively, you actually might get so good at it that someone else will take pleasure in it as well. And if not, you had that pleasure. And that's keeping focused on why you started to do music and your intentions, because there's so many forces in this game who start thinking about what is smart to do and what could be more successful and all that. And I think you just end up watering out, your own pleasure of doing it, as well as watering out, whatever comes out there for listeners you have.
Agreed. Well, mate, I better let you go. This has been a fascinating discussion. It's been a pleasure to finally talk to you. I have been a fan of yours since Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk. So what's that, 97 or so?
Yeah.
Thank you for creating the wonderful music that you've created, and congratulations on a wonderful career, and long may you continue to create music as well.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you so much for the support.
My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I do host this here podcast series called Scars and Guitars. That was my conversation with the bloke at the centre of Emperor. He also has his own solo material these days. His name is Ihsahn. Thank you so much for listening.